Okay, so you know, beyond the who done it and the intrigue there, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk in terms of the whole culture war. But I do think that this piece of video is worth showing you. So this is Tyler Robinson's classmate speaking out. This is the kind of shit that happens when you spend way too much time online. So, we have speculated that there's more than meets the eye about the shooting itself. But whether or not that's true, it is certainly true that I believe that whoever is responsible for this, or whoever seeks to capitalize off of the social chaos that is sure to follow from this, um, clearly are using the internet as the vessel for whatever chaos and strife they are attempting to sow. And so I think this is really worth playing. So let's take a look.
School with this Tyler Robinson kid. I'll show y'all. That's him right there. Tyler Robinson. I'm not trying to like clout chase, make this shit about me, but I'm not gonna say I knew this kid really well. I didn't know him very well at all, but I definitely saw him for like 3 straight years in high school. And the best way I could describe him is just like a Reddit kid. I don't know. I feel like if you were in high school around that same time, and even probably now, like 2018, and then like those kinds of kids, but that's exactly what he was. All I'm gonna say is this is the kind of shit that happens when you spend way too much time online, and all of a sudden your beliefs are all the way this way or all the way this way, and you do some dramatic shit to please these people that are not your friends. This internet shit is seriously no joke.
This internet shit is seriously no joke. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what that kid just said. Um, I think especially the part where he said you try and do something to please people who aren't your friends. And this is what we talked to Brianna a lot about. And this was the point that I tried to convey. You have a lot of people who are popping off online about this event. And I think that, the people out there on TikTok and stuff who are posting what I think are, some pretty obscene videos, either mocking the event or celebrating the event. I think they are doing so under the false impression that there is some army of supporters behind them, or that there are some actual peers in the real world who care about them and who have their back when they inevitably suffer the consequences of having posted such things, which, yeah, there already is a doxing campaign about people who go out there and, post these sort of celebratory videos or tweets or memes and things like this. And, I think it is important to, in this moment, look at just how I do believe, and Russell, we've talked about this, and Russell has even floated this, that the internet in total is a net negative for society.
Yeah,
And
it
I
is.
think I think social media in particular has become this panopticon where people just routinely treat each other with the kind of brutality and the kind of viciousness that they would never treat each other in real life. And I think these social media platforms give the loudest, or the biggest platform and the loudest mic to people who have the most time on their hands to devote to building a following and getting on the algorithm and generating the kind of engagement through clickbait and likes and shares and reposts. And you do that with very inflammatory content. I don't think people who spend a lot of time online and on social media could really argue that the incentives are to be the worst version of yourself, right? That people are incentivized to behave badly online, badly towards each other in ways that you would never act towards another person in real life. And I think there are moments when the emotional cesspool of the internet bubbles over into real life. And I think in the case of terminally online people, it can be difficult at times for them to discern this digital reality from the actual real world. And I think that that presents a grave danger. And I think that that is a perfect recipe for the kind of social instability that I do think the oligarchs are trying to sow. I think there are people, and we might get more into this next week. I think people who are, talking very bellicose on the right in the aftermath of this horrible shooting, I think these people wanted this social instability all along. And I think this is now the pretext that they needed in their mind to sort of really plunge this society into a very dark place. And I think there is a major risk of people becoming so hyper online and so isolated in their real lives that their entire life is online, that they can become deluded into thinking that there's an actual movement of comrades online who will have their back in real life when shit gets real. And I think it is very easy when you spend all your time on these social media platforms to mistake the dopamine hits that come from getting likes and shares and 100s and thumbs up and reinforcement on these platforms. I think there is a danger of mistaking that for real world solidarity. And I think that's what this guy is talking about here. I'll play the last few seconds of this once again.
All I'm going to say is this is the kind of shit that happens when you spend way too much time online and all of a sudden your beliefs are all the way this way or all the way this way, and you do some dramatic shit to please these people that are not your friends. This internet shit is seriously no joke.
Yeah, it's seriously no joke. Now, I'm not saying people should not speak their minds. I'm not saying people should cower in fear, but I do think, given the surveillance capabilities of the state, given the ruthlessness of people, not just in power, but who are on the sidelines seeking to, eat the scraps of a broken society. I do think it is wise to be prudent about what you post, not to put certain things out into the world at this moment. I do think key to building these kinds of successful left movements is survival, not martyrdom. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this documentary about the African People's Socialist Party. They keep their head down, nose to the grindstone, and they work and they build coalition with all kinds of people. O'Malley said, key to the success of his Black Power movement, key to the survival of that Black Power movement, where so many other Black Power movements have been crushed, was their solidarity component, right? Their outreach to white allies who really helped them build an infrastructure. You see them popping off about Charlie Kirk. You see them making any videos about Charlie Kirk. You see them putting out inflammatory statements about Charlie Kirk. No, they're not. They're not online telling everybody every single thing that they feel when they feel it. You know what they're doing? They're doing work in the real world, building community organizations in the real world. And you know what? When the government came for them, guess what? They won. They won because they actually built a real network of people who actually lock arms with them. And I mean lock arms, physically lock arms in the streets. Not, I have a large following on social media and I know I'm going to get a lot of likes when I post the most inflammatory shit I can think of. Because you know what? At the end of the day, those likes and those dopamine hits don't mean anything. They're not real. They are not real in the way that actual activist movements build real networks. And so I think that is an important lesson to glean from this. Ken Klippenstein tweeted this out. This was someone on MSNBC. I don't know who she is. Secret Service agent turned MSNBC analyst, the Evie Pomporis in Charlie Kirk segments calls for pulling back from social media and not feeling the need to tell everybody what we think. Yeah, I don't think you should muzzle yourself entirely, but I do think that you know you should think before what you put into the world at this moment, for the reasons I mentioned. For the reasons I mentioned, and I feel a responsibility to say this because we're in this space. We have a live chat going on right now. We have tens of thousands of chats per week that go through our live chat, through our comment section. And I described offline to Russell and even on the Brianna show today, a lot of times this podcast space, because of all the shit that goes on in the audience and in the comment section and on the Twitter threads, and we read a lot of it, and I don't respond to most of it because you don't want to feed the trolls. But I've described it as sort of the Roman Colosseum where the gladiators watch the audience eat each other alive. The gladiators watch the audience tear each other to shreds. Right? When we come on here, we have we got a beef with the Vanguard. I don't actually hate the Vanguard guys. Like we don't actually hate them. We're making like you have disagreements and you call each other out, and that's part of the game.
I mean, they're
but
okay. To me, they're like characters in a Christopher Guest parody mockumentary about podcasters.
right. Well, but even
I mean, I wouldn't hate that.
No, I'm just using them as an example.
Like, why would you?
But even now, the current thing with
I know that
Taibbi,
they said when we made the joke about like we're gonna fight them in Chicago,
Right.
like they talked about like we were seriously gonna.
Like it's not, or even like I was just using them as an example because our diss track of them was what really kicked the channel off. But like even this current thing, this last week we made a couple videos, calling Taibbi out. It doesn't get that super nasty, like diabolically nasty.
No, I
between the
like
creators.
that,
it gets that way in the audience. It can get that way in the chat where it's very normal online to respond to someone who pisses you off with "fuck you, eat shit, suck my dick, you fat." Like that is not the way normal people interact with each other, and I think there is great danger in spending so much time doing this instead of just kind of looking around and taking in the world around you, that it becomes habit to treat people that way, and it becomes difficult to keep a perspective about how people live in real life versus how we all live online. And so I thought that kid, whoever he was, said exactly the right thing. That was one of my favorite takes about all this. And that's true whether or not the official story is real or whether it's not real, because either way, you're being manipulated. You're being manipulated, and you're walking into a trap that's been set for you on these phones.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that definitely occurred to me because a lot of that was, because Brianna felt, why should we really be tone policing, especially because, and I think you would agree what you're talking about, like the person who goes up there, and I've seen it, but the only reason I've seen it is because the right-wing accounts make a point of finding things like that. I've seen people saying, yeah, they shouldn't stop it, blah, blah, blah. I don't even want to say more being on YouTube, but you get the idea.
Right.
I, unlike both of you, I mean, Brianna's a little bit older than you, but I'm older than both. I don't think either one of you has, I mean, I know you don't remember the pre-internet world in the way that I do. There's no question that it has destroyed people emotionally and psychologically, and I would argue creatively. Like it's really destroyed their ability to concentrate, to think without distraction, to stare at the wall. I no, man. I mean, this thing is there all the time now. I'll give you an example. I was thinking about this. You want to see what this has done to people, like the progression? So where I grew up in Flushing, it was very like third generation removed from Ellis Island, Italian and Irish people mostly, smattering of Jews, mostly Italians, some Irish. There was crazy Maria who lived across the hall from me. I won't say the last name in case she's still alive. I don't want to get sued. I doubt she is, but you never know. She lived across the hall from me my whole life until I went away to college. I still saw her when I would come back from college. She was the crazy woman in the neighborhood. She was the crazy woman who would come banging on your door with a pair of rubber gloves. They're not taking out the garbage. I'm doing something about it. She was that one, right? Every neighborhood in New York had people like that, right? It was part of the local color to have someone like that. She was harmless. She had no political opinions when I was growing up that I was aware of. Around the time I'm a teenager, maybe early 20s, Maria's still living there. My mother was still living there. She starts yelling about the loony left and how the loony left is ruining America. And, I could tell she was being programmed by Fox News. There's the whole cable news movement. This, harmless neighborhood crackpot has all of a sudden been activated and animated with this 24-hour cable news giving her an outlet for her crazy.
Right.
Now, what's the next level of that? You put that fucking crazy Maria on social media. Social media is largely driven by crazy Marias, who, when I was coming up, they didn't have an outlet. That's why they banged on your door. Because they probably wouldn't have banged on your door to tell you about how they're taking out the garbage with the rubber gloves, because they would have put it online, right? Today, they would just put it on X. With the younger generation, when you look at things like collapse in sex, literally collapse in sexual activity, and we were talking about this the other day, the fact that they're not drinking, normally I would applaud that if it's because they were just getting healthier. Yeah, they're just more health conscious, they're doing more meditation, they're doing more yoga, they have healthier psychology, but we know that's not true. It's quite the opposite. They're more depressed, they're more self-deletion inclined, they're more on medication and anti-anxiety. It's because when do you drink in the pre-internet age? Hanging out with your friends. If you wind up becoming a solitary day drinker, it's usually through that route. You didn't start that way. I don't know anyone who starts out drinking Jim Beam by themselves, right? So if you're not socializing with people anymore, well, you're not going to be drinking and you're not going to be fucking. I think of it as a bee colony collapse. And what does it go back to? RFK wants to talk about the vaccines. You know what he can't talk about? Maybe being in front of screens like this is rotting people's minds. You know why he can't talk about that? Because that would require a complete rethinking of the entire economy. It's one thing to take on these pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, they're powerful. Yeah, they have a lot of money, but it's still a drop in the bucket to the overall big picture of the economy. And in the end, he's not going to do that much to them anyway. He's just pushing them a little bit. He's not actually going to do much. When you start talking about, we have to have, because it's brain damaging kids, we have to have them not use social media until they're 16 or 18. Wow, man. Do you know how much advertising money you're talking about for these companies if you did that? Many trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars they would lose. So he's going to talk about the vaccine. He's not going to say, I think that maybe 3-year-olds sitting there with an iPad might be fucking them up. But it clearly is, and it is. And again, I don't think this guy did it, but it's kind of beside the point in terms of the observation that this kid made. It's pushing everything into a fake digital panopticon that is destroying normal human connection.
Yes.
And politics, particularly class politics, are dependent on those connections.
Yes. I think that's right. I think that's right, and I think that is well said. The other point of this too, and this is a difficult point to make in this space, because you talk about the economy losing trillions of dollars. Well, when I come out here and I advise, this is like, it's not good business for me to come on here through YouTube and through Rumble and through Twitter and tell our audience of what 4,000 people right now that none of this is real, right? None of what you're doing right now is real. None
You're
of what
trying to red pill them.
right. Like that's really a stupid thing to do from a business perspective. But I have to say, it is real to an extent. It's real to an extent. I think as a supplement to real world activism and real world connection, it can be
Right.
fine. It can be
Sure.
fun, but
Sure.
you cannot make this your whole life because it just gives you a very warped sense of how to treat other people. It gives you a very warped sense about what's important. I heard somebody say, because I said in my monologue, which most people liked, and it didn't please people who wanted it all one way or the other. But I said in my monologue, I condemn this shooting wholeheartedly and unreservedly, without equivocation or without hesitation. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I talked about how devastating it is for the family, for the children, and stuff like that. And I mean that. And I would never take that back for anybody, no matter what. But you see some comment fly by in the chat. He was a grifter. Grifter, what the fuck you talking about? He's a grifter, so they shot him in the neck. Like that's the kind of language. Like you're using the word grifter as it applies to this online space to describe the consequence of a guy getting shot in the neck. Like that is a perfect example of you're applying online lingo to real life in a way that just does not connect. It suggests there's something fucking fucked up about the way you're processing the world. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, do you see what I'm saying? I don't know. Like to me, that's like you see that and you're like, you're using the terminology of one world to describe another.
Well, and this is at the risk of stepping on what I said on Bree's show. This is my overall theory of the case. I've been reading Peter Turchin's book. I think he's really onto something there. His core theory is when you get an overproduction of elites, and usually that accompanies popular immiseration, because part of the reason you get an overproduction of the elites is the elites get empowered and they wind up sucking all the wealth up to themselves, and then they reproduce their class in too great a numbers for the roles available to them, and you have dissatisfaction on both ends. You have some of the children of the elites become radicalized, and you have a lot of kindling there to light a fire with the population being eviscerated. I believe that you look at people like Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin. These people are not stupid, man. They know history. They know what they're doing. They know at moments like this, it usually doesn't end well for people like them. They are leveraging technology that didn't exist in 1789.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you know what? We have a means of controlling and directing the rage of the peasants against each other that has never existed in history before. And if we can keep them fighting each other long enough, we're not going to need them anymore, because we're right on the verge of that automation, AI, robotics revolution. Because what were they always able to leverage against us? Their labor, the peasant rebellions, right? They were always able to use that, the strikes in the 30s, right? If we don't need them anymore, where's their leverage? And if we build our own domestic police force that can put them down with violence under the guise that this is about immigration, keep them busy, tell them we're doing this for them, well, 5 years, 6 years, just keep them yelling at each other, keep them arguing with each other, play up these puerile culture war provocations on both sides. And by the time they realize the trap they've walked into, it's going to be too late. The robots, the AI are going to have taken their jobs, and the ones who remain are not going to be numerous enough to really challenge us. I believe that their plan, their plot, is to replay all of these ages of revolution in a way that comes out in their favor by leveraging the technology that no elite aristocrats have ever had to bring to bear on the problem.
Yeah. I think that's probably true. And I just want to address this. This is a good point that Jesse makes and a fair point. You know, not everyone lives in NYC. Those of us in small towns rely on the internet for difference. And I've seen you, Jesse, defend the internet. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. Just because I call it a net negative to society doesn't mean I think it should be done away with. I mean, I think alcohol is a net negative to society, but I love it. And you know, no, but like, you know, look, I
And that
mean,
has fueled this entire segment.
if you drink socially and responsibly and you know how to manage it for yourself, it can add a lot of pleasure and fulfillment to your life. I think it can. Same thing is true with the internet and with
Sure.
social media. If you manage it in a healthy way, it can add a lot to your life. But if you're not careful, it can fucking kill you. It can destroy you. And I do think that the internet is destroying the society. I think social media is destroying the society. I really do.
It's like the experiment they did with rats and cocaine. If you put cocaine in the water of rats that are not stressed out, that are contented, that are happy, they won't drink it. They'll actually drink the pure water. But
Right.
rats that are stressed, they'll keep going to the cocaine water. It's not that, like anything else, television can be very educational. I watch a lot of educational programming. This can be the greatest tool for organizing ever created, and in some ways it has been. But it's being manipulated in a way that is unhealthy, and it's being sold to the public in a way that's designed to exacerbate all of the worst tensions and all of the worst tendencies that were already there in our society.
Yes. Agreed.
Please clap.